I never thought I'd be making this kind of post. My wife Annie, 27F, and I, 28M, have been together for 6 years, married for 3. We met at a mutual friend's housewarming party back in college. I was immediately drawn to her genuine laugh and the way she made everyone around her feel comfortable. She was studying psychology while I was finishing my architecture degree. We moved in together after a year of dating, got a small apartment near campus, and adopted our first cat Charlie from the local shelter. Our relationship moved pretty fast after graduation. I landed a job at a mid-sized architecture firm while Annie started working as a school counselor. We got married in a beautiful ceremony at her parents' lake house, though I could tell they weren't completely thrilled about their daughter marrying someone who came from a working-class background. Her dad Richard, 58M, is a successful corporate lawyer, and her mom Susan, 56F, comes from old money. Meanwhile, my parents worked factory jobs their whole lives to put me through college. Despite the class differences, everything was great for the first few years. We adopted another cat, Luna, as a companion for Charlie. We had date nights every Friday, went on weekend trips, and started planning for our future. About 8 months ago, we decided to start saving for our dream house. The real estate market in our area is expensive, so we needed a substantial down payment. I volunteered to take on extra projects at work and started doing freelance work on weekends to boost our savings. Annie agreed this was a good plan, though she seemed less enthusiastic about it than I expected. The problem started about 3 months ago. Annie began acting weird about her phone. We've always known each other's passwords, not because we snooped, but because we had nothing to hide. When we first started dating, Annie actually suggested this as a way to build trust, saying her ex had been secretive about his phone and it always bothered her. But recently, she changed her password and started taking her phone everywhere, even to the bathroom. I tried not to overthink it until last week, when my best friend Tyler, 29M, called me. Tyler and I go way back, we've been friends since middle school, and he was my best man at the wedding. He saw Annie having lunch with her high school boyfriend Kevin, 28M, at a cafe downtown. This wouldn't have been suspicious except Annie told me she was having lunch with her coworker Maria, 26F, that day. Tyler knows about Kevin because he went to the same high school as Annie and Kevin. They dated for 4 years before Kevin moved to London for work. He recently moved back to our city after 8 years abroad. When Tyler mentioned this, my stomach dropped. I remembered how Annie had been mentioning Kevin's name a few times recently, casually bringing up that he was back in town. She even showed me his Instagram profile one night, pointing out how different he looked after all these years. I didn't think much of it then. She was always open about her past relationships, and I never felt threatened by them. I confronted Annie about the lunch. She first tried to deny it, saying Tyler must have confused her with someone else. When I showed her the photo Tyler had taken, he had a gut feeling something was off and snapped a quick pic. She broke down and admitted she'd been meeting Kevin for the past 2 months. She claimed they were just catching up as friends, but something felt off about her explanation. That night, while she was in the shower, I checked her Instagram DMs with Kevin. I know this wasn't right, but my gut was screaming that something was wrong. Their messages went back months. They started innocently enough, catching up on life updates, but gradually turned more personal. They've been reminiscing about their past relationship, their first kiss, their prom night, and discussing how they never got proper closure because he had to move so suddenly. What hurts the most is that I've been killing myself working 60 to 70-hour weeks to save for our future. I've missed family dinners, friends' birthdays, and even had to skip my nephew's first birthday party last month because I was working on a big freelance project. All that time, she's been using my absence to meet her ex. Yesterday, I discovered that Annie's parents knew about these meetings. They always loved Kevin. He comes from a similar background as them, went to an Ivy League school, and now works in investment banking. They apparently encouraged Annie to get closure with Kevin, saying it would help her move forward. These are the same people who made subtle digs at my career choice and background throughout our relationship. I've moved into our spare bedroom for now. Annie keeps following me around the apartment, crying and saying I'm overreacting. She swears nothing physical happened between them and offers to show me all their messages. She says she'll cut contact with Kevin if that's what I want, but I feel like the trust is already broken. She's been deleting messages and changing her story about how often they met. Our cats sense the tension. Charlie's been hiding under the bed, and Luna keeps meowing outside the spare bedroom door at night. We have a big family vacation planned for Christmas, with both our families staying at a lake house we already put a deposit on. Annie's sister is supposed to fly in from California with her kids. Everything's a mess, and I don't know how to proceed. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since my last post, and everything I've discovered has made the situation worse. After reading everyone's comments suggesting I dig deeper, I decided to check our shared cloud storage account. Annie and I set this up 2 years ago to share photos and documents. What I found made me physically sick. There were dozens of photos of Annie and Kevin together, at parks, restaurants, museums, and even at a Jack Johnson concert 3 weeks ago. That concert hit me particularly hard because Annie told me she was going with Maria, and I couldn't attend because I was working late on a project that would have paid for part of our house down payment. The timestamps on these photos showed they've been meeting at least twice a week for the past 3 months, not 2 as she initially claimed. The photos weren't inappropriate, no kissing or touching, but the way they looked at each other in them told me everything I needed to know. There was one photo of them at a rooftop bar downtown, and Annie was wearing the dress I bought her for our last anniversary. She told me she'd never worn it because it was too fancy for our usual date nights. I took screenshots of everything and showed them to Annie. This time, her story changed. She admitted they kissed once after the concert but swears it didn't go further. She tried to turn it around on me, saying she felt lonely and neglected because of my long working hours. She brought up how I missed her cousin's wedding last month, I was working on a huge project, and how we haven't had a proper date night in months. I reminded her that I was working these hours for our future, something we both agreed on. We had a specific savings goal for the house down payment, and she was right there with me when we made the plan. She even made a cute savings chart that we hung on our fridge. Now she was using my dedication to our future as an excuse for her betrayal. What made everything worse was what I learned from Maria yesterday. I ran into her at the coffee shop near Annie's school, and she looked uncomfortable seeing me. After some prodding, she admitted that Annie has been leaving work early on Fridays for the past 2 months, claiming she had doctor's appointments. Maria only told me because she felt guilty. Apparently Annie had asked her to cover if I ever called the school looking for her. I also discovered that Annie had opened a separate bank account 2 months ago. She's been depositing part of her paycheck there instead of our joint account that we were using for house savings. When I asked her about it, she claimed she was saving up to surprise me with a vacation once we reached our house down payment goal. But the account statement showed multiple charges from restaurants and bars on days she was supposedly working late. I consulted a divorce lawyer yesterday, though Annie doesn't know yet. The lawyer advised me to gather all financial documents and evidence of her infidelity, even though we live in a no-fault state. I've started looking for apartments, focusing on places that allow pets because I can't imagine leaving Charlie behind. The hardest part has been dealing with our families. My mom has been calling Annie every day, trying to understand what happened. My parents treated Annie like their own daughter. My mom taught her how to make our family's secret lasagna recipe, and my dad helped her learn to drive stick shift last summer. They're devastated. Meanwhile, her parents are still defending her actions. Her mom Susan called me yesterday, suggesting we try marriage counseling. She had the nerve to say that perhaps if I had spent less time working and more time nurturing my marriage, this wouldn't have happened. This coming from the woman who spent the last 3 years making snide comments about my career and income. Annie keeps trying to convince me to work things out. She deleted Kevin from all her social media and showed me the message where she told him they couldn't meet anymore. But last night, I saw her sitting in her car in the parking lot for an hour after getting home, probably talking to him. When she finally came up to the apartment, her eyes were red from crying. I've been staying late at the office because I can't stand being in the apartment with her. Our cats seem confused by the tension. Charlie follows me everywhere when I'm home, while Luna spends most of her time in Annie's room. The Christmas vacation deposit is non-refundable, and Annie's sister keeps sending me texts asking what's going on. I haven't responded to any of them. Update 2, it's been 2 months since my original post, and everything has completely fallen apart. I moved out last week into a small but decent apartment near my office. The decision about the cats was brutal. I took Charlie, and Annie kept Luna. We based this on which cat was more bonded to each of us, but it still hurt watching them get separated after being together for 3 years. But that's not even the biggest development. Last Thursday, I received a message on LinkedIn from a woman named Rachel, 27F. She introduced herself as Kevin's wife. Yes, you read that right, Kevin is married. He had been lying to Annie about being divorced. Rachel found their messages on their shared iPad at home and decided to track me down. Rachel and I met for coffee the next day. She brought screenshots of messages between Kevin and Annie that went back even further than I knew. Apparently, they'd been in contact for nearly 6 months, starting when Kevin first moved back to the city. The messages were explicit in nature and confirmed they'd been physical multiple times. There were detailed plans about their meetups, including hotel reservations that matched up with days Annie claimed to be working late. What made me feel even more stupid was learning that Kevin's office is in the same building where Annie and I had dinner for our anniversary 3 months ago. Annie had suggested that restaurant, claiming she'd heard good reviews about it. Now I wonder if she was hoping to run into him that night. The way everything unfolded with Rachel was surreal. She told me how Kevin had been acting strange lately, picking fights over small things and staying late at work. She had initially thought he was just stressed about his new job. She only checked the iPad because he'd been weirdly protective of his phone. Sound familiar? I filed for divorce the next day. When I confronted Annie with this information, she finally broke down and told the truth. They'd been sleeping together for over a month. She claimed she didn't know about Rachel at first, and when she found out, Kevin fed her some story about their marriage being over and divorce papers being filed. She swore she was going to tell me everything and end it with Kevin, but her track record with honesty makes it impossible to believe anything she says anymore. The fallout has been massive. Annie's perfect image in our social circle has crumbled. Maria and most of her work friends have distanced themselves from her after learning how she used them as covers for her affair. Tyler and his wife have blocked her on social media. Even her younger sister, who used to idolize her, Cancelled her Christmas visit after learning what happened. The only silver lining is that we never bought that house. The money I saved is now safely in my own account. My firm has been understanding about everything. My boss even offered me some time off, but I declined. Work has been my escape through all this. I've started hitting the gym in the mornings before work, mainly because I can't sleep anyway. The apartment feels empty without Luna, but Charlie has adjusted well. He's actually become more affectionate since the move, almost like he knows I need the company. Annie tried to negotiate some kind of shared custody arrangement for the cats, but I refused. I can't handle seeing her regularly, and it wouldn't be fair to keep uprooting them between homes. Her parents have finally stopped calling me. The last time Richard called, he actually tried to suggest that Annie's affair was understandable given how much I worked. I hung up on him mid-sentence. The entitlement of these people still amazes me. They raised their daughter to believe she could do no wrong, and now they're enabling her worst behavior. Update 3, this will be my final update, posted 4 months after my original post. The divorce was finalized last week. Annie tried to claim part of my savings for the house, arguing that it was marital property since we were married when I earned it. My lawyer successfully argued that those were personal earnings from my extra work hours, the same hours she used to meet Kevin. The judge agreed, and I kept my savings. The whole Kevin and Rachel situation exploded in an unexpected way. Rachel filed for divorce but also reported Kevin to their company's HR department because he had been using company resources to facilitate the affair. He apparently used his corporate credit card to pay for some of their hotel stays. He got fired last month. Annie tried to get him hired at her school as a guidance counselor. He had some counseling experience from London, but the administration turned him down after learning about the circumstances. Annie's perfect world has crumbled pretty fast. She had to move back in with her parents because she can't afford rent on her counselor's salary. Kevin moved in with her for a while, but that lasted less than 3 weeks. From what I heard through mutual friends, they had a huge fight when Annie discovered he was still trying to fix things with Rachel. He moved out and apparently went to stay with his brother in Seattle. Luna got sick last month, and Annie called me crying because she couldn't afford the vet bills. Despite everything, I couldn't let Luna suffer, so I paid for the treatment. It was just a severe kidney infection, and she's doing better now. When I dropped off the payment at the vet's office, I ran into Annie in the parking lot. She looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days. She tried to hug me and apologize again, but I just walked away. My old apartment neighbor told me Annie drives by my new place sometimes. I installed security cameras just in case, but she hasn't tried to contact me directly. She did send a long email last week about how sorry she was and how she ruined the best thing in her life. I didn't respond. Charlie has completely settled into our new place. My sister brings her kids over to play with him sometimes, which he loves. The apartment finally feels like home. I took down all the photos and artwork Annie and I bought together and replaced them with new pieces I picked up at local art fairs. Rachel and I still talk occasionally. She started a support group for people affected by infidelity, and it's helped me process some things. She's moving to Chicago next month for a fresh start. We grabbed coffee last week to say goodbye, and for the first time in months, I felt genuinely okay. The money I saved for the house is now going towards starting my own small architecture firm. My boss has been mentoring me through the process, and I already have a few potential clients lined up. It's not the future I planned, but maybe it's better. Annie's sister sent me a message yesterday saying Annie and Kevin are trying to work things out again. Apparently, he came back from Seattle and they're looking for an apartment together. Her parents are co-signing because neither of them can qualify on their own. I honestly don't care anymore. I've blocked most of her family on social media and changed my phone number last week. That's it. That's the end of this story. Thanks to everyone who supported me through this mess. Special thanks to the person who suggested installing security cameras. It helped me sleep better at night. I won't be making any more updates about this situation.